Who would like to discuss and describe what is human trafficking?
I'll chime in because as a survivor and being on both sides of the coin, I'm going to give the Andy version, which basically is anytime someone is forced or coerced into doing something against their will, specifically in the sexual activity, labor activity, any kind of enslavement for profit, that is trafficking. There are different factions of trafficking, but we know that.
Hello and welcome back to all my Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast fans and listeners. I'm Janice Debo, your host, and you're not seeing triple. There are four of us on your screen. You're used to seeing two, but there's four today. We have a very, I don't want to say exciting, but a very hot topic to talk about, and that is human trafficking. But first of all, I want to introduce our guest or let them introduce themselves. So, Sylvia, let's have you go first.
My name is Sylvia Stanard. I work with Youth for Human Rights and United for Human Rights, and we promote human rights education as a tool to fight human trafficking, and particularly with um, education for the youth, but also as a demand reduction strategy, as far as really teaching young men what are human rights and the importance and need to respect human rights for women as well as everybody. But it's a demand reduction strategy.
Oh, where are you coming to us from?
I'm from Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Okay, across the country. We got Oregon covered, the
Yeah.
the capital. And next, Andy, when I could introduce you, but I want you to introduce yourself.
I'm Andy Berger, founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that serves the human trafficking area in terms of reduction. As Sylvia said, we are definitely on the move to eradicate human trafficking in every community, village, anywhere around the world that we can. So that is our goal with education, with tools, with all kinds of different programs and active, I would say active assistance, let's put it that way. So yes, we are glad to be here and thanks for having us on and look forward to talking.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. And Donna, you're up.
Well, I'm Bishop Donna Hubbard from Atlanta, Georgia, y'all. And I say y'all,
That's right. I do too.
from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the executive director and founder of Woman at the Well Transition Center. We've been around for close to 4 decades working in the area of women who are impacted by incarceration and human trafficking, specifically human trafficking for 40, almost 40 years, close to 40 years. And we were working with trafficking when no one was talking about trafficking. And with a 40-year background in aviation, I've basically worked on making sure that aviation specialists, public health professionals, um, clergy, and law enforcement is informed on how to recognize and report human trafficking. And to compartmentalize what that means is making sure that every area that experiences front facing circumstances around human trafficking is aware and educated about what human trafficking is, how to respond to it. Quite often, people don't know what they're looking at. And so that's what we do is we provide training for anywhere from 200 to 2,000 people at a time around the world. I've trained in 17 different countries. And Woman at the Well Transition Center has 4 specific programs that we provide for survivors of human trafficking and incarceration, and often those overlap. So I'm excited about talking with you all and sharing what we do, who we are, and how we got started.
Well, that's great, but you gave me a great segue because I want to jump right in. Now, until I met Andy in 2000, let's see, 2011, we've known each other 15 years, Andy. It was 15 years in January was our anniversary. So
Happy anniversary.
happy anniversary. Well, I want to approach this from the educational standpoint at the moment because I'd never heard of human trafficking until I met Andy. I'm okay, so Donna, I'm from North Carolina, so hi y'all. But I had,
Well,
yeah, I'd never heard the term. And I imagine quite a bit of society and the world may be still ignorant on what that is. And I want to help break the silence on that. Who would like to discuss and describe what is human trafficking?
I'll chime in because as a survivor and being on both sides of the coin, I'm going to give the Andy version, which basically is anytime someone is forced or coerced into doing something against their will, specifically in the sexual activity, labor activity, any kind of enslavement for profit, that is trafficking. There are different factions of trafficking, but we know that it is 160 billion plus criminal enterprise across the world, and 95 plus billion of that is sex trafficking. So as a survivor of child sex trafficking in the early 60s, they didn't have anything. They didn't even talk about child abuse. Basically, kids were like chattel, physical things that could be moved and removed at the whim of an adult. And so you just didn't go see that special uncle, or you didn't talk about it at, the family picnic. And so we've come a long way in terms of awareness, but human trafficking has been around since probably just after Cain and Abel. Think about the Greco-Roman era, all the people that were enslaved, forced into labor, forced into sexual activities against their will with no out. And that's how I was for 17 years. And so by God's grace, here I am. But we do not want people to fall prey to the different forms, whether it's grooming, people getting groomed, people getting paid to recruit, like on college campuses, to recruit kids that then become part of a trafficking ring. So many diverse ways that predators work. So with Voices Against Trafficking, which these ladies are a fine part of their charter members with us, one of the things that we are after is to, yes, educate, create greater public awareness, whether it's through books, music, magazines, speaking in person, speaking virtually, doing trainings, bringing new things out so that we can capture the interest of the public, especially where we're at in the US, to say, hey, let's talk about this, not to terrify you, but to inform you and help us do a better job of keeping other people from being victims, especially our children, because children are the future of any community around the world.
Absolutely.
I think,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think I'd like to chime in just with what human trafficking is and say, most people think that human trafficking is specifically just sexual exploitation. And I think it's important that we understand that there are so many other facets to human trafficking, because when we talk about human trafficking, a lot of people turn a deaf ear because they think it's just short of just of prostitution or just sexual exploitation, and oh, that doesn't touch me. But I think that what Andy, as a survivor, and myself as a survivor, what's important for us to make sure that people understand is that human trafficking is so much more. There are so many other facets to human trafficking. And the fastest growing form of trafficking right now is organ harvesting.
Oh,
And people think it doesn't touch. But we see so many children going missing. The ILO determines that there are 360,000 reports right now of missing children. That's 1,000 children a day that go missing. And it's not all sexual exploitation. Some of it is organ harvesting. There are child soldiers, there are child brides. And again, we think that that doesn't touch us. But when a drug dealer puts a gun and a package of drugs in the hand of a kid and says, "Bring me back my money," he's just recruited a child soldier. And this happens all across our country in some of the most exclusive and urban and suburban neighborhoods in the US. So I think it's important that we make sure that people understand human trafficking includes organ harvesting, labor trafficking, which happens in spas and nail salons and in sweatshops, when we buy that knockoff purse in New York on the streets and we think we're getting a great deal, but there's a sweatshop behind that where somebody, possibly a child, has had to pay that price. So it includes child soldiers, child brides, and those are some of the fastest growing forms of human trafficking right now.
that's mind blowing. I just recently interviewed the founder of Confronting Domestic Violence, of which I'm on the committee, on the board. But I was shocked at what is constituted as domestic violence too. And we did touch on the subject of how there's a tie-in and a crossover with trafficking and domestic violence.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing about these different facets, you're right, the public is grossly undereducated, and partly there's that apathy, like, oh, well, it doesn't happen here because we live in a nice neighborhood. Well, what's a nice neighborhood, right? What does that look like? How do you know that's safe? Do you actually really know every neighbor? But like Donna said, and I know Sylvia has a lot to say too, is the organ harvesting is rampantly on the rise, and you have so many different countries that, hey, I need a kidney, so I can pay, you know, $250,000, go find me one, right? And they get somebody that's willing to go kill a child or an adult or recruit under false circumstances. And let's just say, without terrifying the audience, that the people that had the organs taken from them are not in a nice cushy hospital bed. They do not have a surgeon who cares about the hygiene. This is brutality at a level most of us cannot stomach. And yet we have to know about this.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make a point that a lot of people don't know, at least in the US. So for the US audience to know that this, you know, the common misconception is that these are people brought in, migrants or whatever, brought into the US and then they're trafficked. But actually about 70% of the people trafficked in the US are US citizens. So this has happened to US citizens. So that's got to be something that's known and understood and confronted when you're trying to solve the problem. Closing the borders is not going to get rid of trafficking. So there's a lot of trafficking. There's a lot of familiar trafficking. I used to volunteer in DC jail with the women, and every single one of them had been a victim of trafficking at one point in time, and almost all of them were either domestic violence, their partner, domestic partner, or very often I was shocked. One, you know, told me her whole story about her mother teaching her the family business when she was 11, and her mother was her pimp.
Oh,
so you know, it's really got to be known that it is a U.S. problem.
Yes, and we're demanders of it.
Absolutely. But, you know, the interesting thing is because we have become so much more educated in the U.S., unfortunately, U.S. citizens who are looking to exploit a child or another individual have caused the sex tourism trade to grow. So there's a huge market for sex tourism now. And in the last 2 weeks, if we paid attention to the news, we saw that there was a huge bust of a large sex tourism ring where these individuals thought they were meeting 12 and 13-year-old girls and boys in places in Asia, in Africa, and South America. But indeed, they were all U.S. citizens. Every one of them were U.S. citizens that were going to other countries to exploit a child or another human being. So the sex tourism trade has grown, and partially that's because of the media. So while the media has been a wonderful tool to educate people across the country, it has also been one of those, they highlight human trafficking as a major issue, but at the same time, they glamorize it. And when you think of some of the movies where human trafficking in all different forms has been glamorized, it normalizes our conscience and our subconscious to violence and exploitation as something we should expect to happen or something that person deserved.
Right. We're desensitized to the value of life in general. Yeah. And we're desensitized to what that means. You know, sexual intimacy is something that should be respected as well in the proper relationships or context of whatever person's life that is. But we don't have that value anymore because, as Donna said, it's been in movies, it's been glamorized. And a couple of years ago, I can't remember the reporting authority, but they did a survey of female sex workers, and 89% of those surveyed said that they had been groomed, they had been recruited as young as 11 or 12 years old. So now they're in their 20s. They don't know what else to do for a job. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to get educated because that's all they know. So not every person who's in the sex trade, I would say a majority of them do not choose to be there initially.
Right.
And if you're an adult and you make a choice, that's on you. But when you're a child, When you're under 18, that is not your choice.
Legally, it can't be your choice.
That's right. Exactly. But we don't enforce the laws either. We have
It just depends on who it is. It just depends on who it is. We enforce those laws against some people and not against others. And so there's that leniency. People feel like I can get away with it. I'm haunted by one of the stories that we saw recently, the gentleman who was arrested, who came from, I don't remember where he came from. I want to say, no, I'm not going to name the state, but he was a US citizen, and he had gone over to Asia several times because the people at the airport recognized him and remembered him. And it was her family that said, the young girl's family, that said she's been missing, and they found her in a suitcase. They found her unalive in a suitcase, and he was arrested, having been there several times to exploit that same young girl. And so we don't think about the long-term effect of human trafficking and how we have been, like as Andy said, desensitized to some of it. We think it's just prostitution. We think it's just sex exploitation. But that family will suffer forever because of the loss of that. Those people in the airport that recognized that man and knew that he had been there several times. The tour agency that set it up will have to answer to that one day. Recently, my daughter brought to my attention, there's a very popular site. I won't mention the site until we get the final confirmation, but we do have an investigation going on. That is a site that is advertising used toys and clothes for sale. And one of the toys, the dolls, was described as 100 pounds, long brown hair, blue eyes. The picture on the screen was a doll, but the description of that doll was 100 pounds, female, long brown hair, blue eyes.
Wow.
Wow.
That's just...
They're brazen. These criminals, they do not care. They could care less if they get caught. They'll just, throw somebody else under the bus. Absolutely. But they get very creative. And that's why the Dirty Dozen list comes out from, the National Center for Child and Sexual Exploitation, because some of the top companies, people that, I'm going to buy that cute little thing online from this company, even though they use these codes and they use products to speak to the predatory people out there. Hey, we got this, we've got that. And who knows, it's somebody's daughter, niece, whatever. I was just involved about 3 weeks ago in an active case, not in my state. We won't name the state, but a 6-year-old girl was brave enough to finally tell her mother that the father, her dad, had been violating her since she was 3 years old. Okay, so now she's 6. And she's in one state with the mom and dad. Dad wants to divorce the mom because he thinks that'll keep the child from speaking. Mom reports it. And the state that finally ended up with this particular family and case basically said, she's too well-spoken to be true. You must have coached her. Now, this is a homeschooled girl. Yeah, she's 6 years old. So she's first grade level. And today's first graders are way smarter than I was when I was in first grade. So because she can describe his anatomy and the various acts that he engaged with this 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old daughter, they don't believe her. And so it's been this, they wanted to take the 2-year-old as well and put both of them in foster care for a couple of years till they figured it out. And I'm like, so now Voices Against Trafficking did chime in. Boy, that was just one of those things I could not ignore, and basically shared a little bit about my story and how that kind of abuse, I have, even if I'd wanted to have my own children, I could not because of the damage. Okay. And that was a very young age. It's all good with me, but what if that little girl wants to have children and she can't because of the terrible abuse? And here she is trying to speak out as a brave child, a brave and courageous child, to protect her younger sister as well. So we are making some progress, but the catch was, I got an update last week. The husband, the dad and the husband, is dating a sex worker, a known sex worker, and she's living in his home. Even though he's separated from the wife. That alone should be illegal, and they should both be in jail without any consideration. And yet, again, This
It goes
child
back to who
has
it
rights.
is.
Yeah, this child's dignity and her human rights have been violated, and we're fighting just for one. That's why we're international, but we focus on
Yeah.
any human that needs our help.
Wow.
And what does that say to that young girl about,
Yes.
and to those that know her, about being willing to come forward?
Yeah.
Whether you're going to be believed, whether you can tell your story, who you can tell it to. Maybe this person gets punished, but this person doesn't get punished.
Right.
And I think it sends such a huge message. Again, we don't look at the big picture, the long-term effect of how human trafficking is affecting our communities. Our communities, our families. In my era, and I don't know how, I don't know if any of you all are as old as I am, but it was, what happens in the house, you stays in the house. You don't talk about it,
Right.
and then you went through the era of we're only as sick as our secrets, So we came up in an era where we did not talk about certain things.
That's right.
And in the end, I think in the women that I've counseled, I see the resentment of their mothers by some of these women because she didn't save me. But we
Right.
forget mama couldn't save herself either.
Right. Right. Well, I have a good friend that her daughter reported her dad, and her dad's in prison, thankfully. And of course, everything was made public. But if you don't expose these people that are doing these horrible things, things are never going to get any better. And,
Right.
and that's why I admire all three of you for speaking up and speaking out. And that's why we're doing this, because I don't mind. I want to talk about the tough subjects, the dirty laundry, whatever it takes to help stop some of this stuff. If we save one person, it matters.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. You're part of the media that does good work. Every interview any of us does.
Yes,
Sylvia,
absolutely.
Donna, our team, any interview, anytime we speak and train, we're hoping to launch Voices Against Trafficking's University Tour for 2027 to get on the campuses and start talking to these kids before they get recruited, or if they're tempted to be recruited, the ramifications of what that does. The most dangerous place for a female right now is between 18 and 24 is on a college or university campus.
Wow.
So if I can bring speakers, like Sylvia and Donna and all the rest of our crew, and other people, we may be able to get that generation at least squared away on the value of their life and the life of somebody next to them.
Okay.
We just did a training at a presentation at Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta, because that's what Atlanta is famous for. But in addition to that, we have middle schools and high schools that are asking us to come in and educate at the PTA meeting. The college campuses, I've done Georgia State, Georgia Tech, several colleges in New York. And as Andy said, it's going to be really important that we are able to do not just aftercare or intervention, but we've got to do prevention with these targeted populations that are not being addressed. And it's for women and for young men, because again, it's not just sexual exploitation. We have kids who are coming from areas where they're being recruited to play sports that are being trafficked.
Oh.
Yes, they're being trafficked. So the scout will pick this youngster up and say, hey, to the parents, I'll give you this money and ensure that your child is going to a good school and he's going to be playing ball. And they own that kid when he gets to the States. They own that kid. He lives where they say he lives. And if he can't play sports, they will use him in some other way. But the sad part about it is the kid doesn't even realize that he's being exploited.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Sylvia, where have you done your education programs? Is it all ages, all stages?
Well, one of the most interesting programs I did actually was I did a training with doctors at Howard University. And I was really surprised because I, asked for hands to be raised. Do you recognize this? Do you recognize that? And there were so many signs of trafficking that the doctors didn't recognize. And I was training emergency room doctors. I mean, unless the woman was, violently raped and they could see that as, they didn't see tattoos. They didn't see somebody not letting the person be in the bed by themselves and hanging with them the whole time and when they're in the ER. So there's just, we think that people are aware. And I was shocked at how unaware some of the doctors were. They just hadn't really thought it through, and they needed the training. Mm-hmm. Another training that I did that was very interesting is I did training with taxi drivers. Ooh. And we do a lot of Ubers, but really the taxis are what are being used to transport girls because there's no paper trail. With Uber, there's a paper trail as to who paid for it and that kind of thing. Where the address it went to, taxi, there's no paper trail. So every single one of the taxi drivers had seen things, but they had no idea what to do about it. So it was important to train them as far as just what to do. Don't alert the person, call 911 after you drop the girl off, tell them what's happening, all this kind of stuff. So I think training is really important in all fields and sectors, and kind of thinking it through and going, oh yeah, okay, taxis is is where it's really happening and why, and there is Uber training, but I've talked to quite a few Uber drivers and they all are like, oh, there is, so apparently buried in the Uber website, if you're an Uber driver, you can get training, but it's very buried and they don't do it. But really, it's not who really transports girls for the most part. Right. At 3 a.m. because they don't want that paper trail. Right. So taxi driving training is really important, and hospital training, particularly for ER doctors, so they recognize things.
Well, let's talk about that because I wanted to delve into the grooming topic and as well as signs that people can be educated on. So whoever wants to speak, all of you, whatever in those areas, because if we're not educating people, I mean, I've been shocked already, and we're, so let's go to grooming and signs.
Grooming is different, from every different stage. I was just going to say, so each one of us will have a different perspective on grooming that I think is equally important.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say signs. As far as signs, one thing that people really have no idea about is that tattoos. Oh. Particularly tattoos on the neck. There'll be a crown or a king or a person's name, and that's really like, this girl belongs to me. It's a label. Ooh. So it's something to be aware of. And again, with tattoo parlors, but also when you go into the ER, if there's a girl with a lot of interesting tattoos on the neck, that's something to be aware of and to kind of engage in dialogue. Obviously at school, kids dropping out, kids not showing up, kids being exhausted, falling asleep constantly during class. Those kind of things can also be drug abuse, can be many other things, but can also be trafficking because they've been up half the night working and now they're, showing up for school late. So it's important to know some of these signs, and somebody with them all the time is another sign, particularly when you're traveling, which Donna would know even more about. But, if somebody's on an airplane and there's somebody with them, kind of doesn't let them leave, doesn't let them get up, same on the bus, in an ER, anything like that, where you have sort of a bodyguard type looking situation, it's a sign.
Okay. Well, that's something.
I'm sorry. And part of grooming too is one of the gals that we rescued, who eventually became our daughter, because she wanted to have a family. And Ed and I became parents in our 60s, and it was great. And now she's a social master's in social work and helping kids that were like her. But in the beginning, Allison is her pseudonym in the book, so we'll stick with that. Allison, her father was a violator, and he was prominent in the religious communities. And so she was abused and violated for a long time. The mother finally found out and finally decided to do something and divorced him. But she was a raging alcoholic by that time as well, more interested in the boyfriends than the daughter. So Allison was alone from ages 12 to 16 with just 6 frozen meals in the freezer, to eat. Mother didn't care about the school. And eventually at 14, someone said, hey, you want to come to a party? And so that was the first introduction to drugs for her. The second introduction, the grooming part, came just as she turned 17, there was an older woman, a 30-year-old woman in our area, who somehow connected with her and kind of noticed the vulnerability and the shyness and the awkwardness, and said, hey, tell me about what are you doing in school? And oh, that sounds great. Hey, if you'd ever like to have coffee sometime, right? And then coffee became lunch, and then there was a little gift the next time, and on it went for about 6 or 7 weeks. And then the last time, or the kicker was, hey, I have some friends coming into town. They're going to be on the South End and they're staying at a motel, and I would really love for you to meet them. So let's go and I'll pick you up and everything. You don't have to worry about it. And so once she got through that motel door, though, that was it. And she was told, you'll be thrown in jail, not me, because I have a job and I'm respected, and you don't get any of this money, but you have to do these things with these 3 people. And so again, creating trust, creating relationships that should be safe. It's very, very difficult. And I fear for a lot of the young people who are now, we got AI, we have internet, we have millions of predators online looking for human product. And if the adults are not educated, if they don't step up, then we're going to have a lot of difficulties in the future generations. We already do, but like really bad, because we're not diligent enough to say, you know what, I gave you that phone. These were the rules on how to use it. You didn't abide by that. So we're going to take the phone back for a while until you can show me you can respect how to use this phone. Right. But we forgot how to be parental, even if we're just the aunts,
I would have to say, I'm looking at 4 different areas in terms of aviation. There isn't anywhere where more people move more quickly than in an airport, which is why traffickers transport individuals on airplanes. Mm-hmm. And I've been a flight attendant with American Airlines for 15 years. I retired this year, just a month ago, in fact, to concentrate really on doing the work that I'm doing. But I can tell you that I helped to redesign our human trafficking awareness training program at American Airlines, who actually hired me as the first front-facing flight attendant human trafficking survivor. Mm-hmm. And so I've been really grateful to be able to work with American Airlines around training not just flight attendants, but pilots and other front-facing staff on how to recognize and report human trafficking. And so when we look at grooming, we look at things like cases we've had where young girls were told they're going to be in videos and movies, and so they take this one-way ticket to New York, even though they were told it was a round trip. They take this one-way ticket to New York and they end up there. And when they get there, they get transported on a bus, and then they end up in a hotel. And the videos that are being done are not the kind of videos that they thought. And quite often, those same young girls, now they're going to be told those, if you don't do what we tell you to, we'll send these videos home to your family, and the shame and the guilt. So that's one of the ways, even in aviation. But you also have cases where you have people who are trafficked for labor, who take they answer these ads, no experience necessary and all expenses paid. And then when they get to certain cities, they find out they lose their ID. They don't have their ID. It's taken from them. Their passports are taken from them. They may be put in a sweatshop. They may be put out in an agricultural field, depending on where they end up. And they work, from sun up to sundown. They get one meal a day. They sleep in hotels that have 30 people sleeping in that room. And so when it comes to aviation, people move more quickly, and traffickers count on us not seeing what we're looking at.
Right, exactly.
And when it comes to public health, we've got to have our public health specialists aware. When you see a person come in with 2 or 3 girls, these teenage girls are being tested for STDs, and they come in every 6 months with 3 different girls. And these girls have a pocketbook with 10 different hotel room keys and a pocketbook full of condoms. Those are the kind of red signs we need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And they are groomed to believe that once they get them, nobody else is going to want them. Nobody else is looking for them. And this is what all the girls are doing. This is what it takes to get into movies and videos and music. Educators have students that leave campus at lunchtime And sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. Sometimes when they come back, they look like they've been drugged. They probably have. They may come back with bruises on their body. They may come back, they may be wearing clothing that is much more mature than they should be wearing. They may have more money on them than they should have. And so those are the kind of things that have to be looked at. And then for law enforcement, they have been taught. The partner that I've had for over 2 decades that has worked with me on the streets here in Atlanta is a law enforcement officer. And he talks about how they have been trained that women like myself who work the streets, who have been arrested in hotels, all they know to do is lock us up because that's what they're taught that they're supposed to do. But law enforcement officers also have to be trained on how to recognize and report what human trafficking is, not just prostitution, but what human trafficking is and how it impacts the people that they pick up. And quite often they'll arrest them, but they don't arrest the person that's trafficking them.
Right.
And so, and then, we have celebrities that find themselves in certain positions where they see trafficking, but they don't want to report it because then it takes them off the grid. And now traffickers have become so sophisticated that they will send people into jail to recruit girls and boys. They will send them, they will go to jail, and in jail that young lady or that young man say, hey, do you have a place to live when you get out? And they're like, no, my parents kicked me out, my family kicked me out, they don't want me. Well, you can come and live with me and my daddy, or you can come and live with me and my boyfriend. And the next thing you know, they're indebted to them and they have to pay that debt off. So the grooming process can start as young as 10 years old. And it goes on depending on that person or that child's exposure. And I think we as parents and the villages that our children are growing up in, the communities that we're growing up in, we have to be a lot more vigilant about what's going on around us. We can't just look at a situation and say, it's not my business, because most people will see something that looks strange, but they don't say something, number one, because they don't want to be wrong. And number two, they don't want to get involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the part of the problem, is not getting involved, not even caring enough, which is why everything we produce, through Voices Against Trafficking, you'll find our helplines and hotlines. It's on the website, it's on the book, it's in the books, it's wherever we have anything that is promoted or published. We do help tips, like for April, Child Abuse Awareness Month. We have all of these different things to help give tools to people that are like, well, I don't know, what do I do? Well, do not put yourself in harm's way, but there are a lot of things. You can take a selfie like one of our members did, Dr. Lisa Noel Babbage, first chapter in our latest book about her experience in the airport. And she was aware enough to notice something didn't look right with this gentleman and the baby. And, I'm taking a selfie and got the flight number that he would, she knew what to do. And that's what one of our major goals is. Let us help you have age appropriate conversations with your children, with your employees, with whomever it is that you associate with. Let us help give you some tools. Let's have you talk to so-and-so. Make sure you have these numbers in your phone. This way, if you do say something, you can safely report it and not feel like I'm ratting out somebody, or, that you're going to get in trouble in your area. No, they're trained. They're going to help you figure it out. And if you're watching and you have been hurt and you want help, there are numbers for that too. And you can always reach out to Voices Against Trafficking. And one of our members is going to be the person that can help you or talk to you or find a way. So we don't want you to feel you're out there alone, like all this stuff, right? And as a parent or a guardian or an aunt, foster care parent, grandparent, it is really on you to be informed. At this if you go to a park with your grandkids, you're going to see kids from other people that maybe aren't being watched as diligently, maybe aren't, so do the good neighbor thing. Be involved enough to be aware. And we invite you to ask any questions you have.
Absolutely. I think that Voices Against Trafficking is one of the most accessible and greatest resources, especially for individuals who, number one, are uninformed about what human trafficking is and want to know how to get involved or how they can help, or how do they just prepare their own family. And Voices Against Trafficking website, as Andy said, offers all that information. And it provides a paper trail, provides a pathway to be able to be not only a volunteer, an advocate, educated, informed. And so I think the biggest the biggest disadvantage is that people don't take advantage of the resources that are available. Women at the Well Transition Center, we provide trainings all over the country. As a flight attendant, I am always gone, but I've also provided trainings in 17 different countries.
Nice.
To everything from law enforcement to airline employees around the world, and law enforcement around the world, as well as Parliament. We went to the Parliament in Latvia. I had no idea that Transylvania had a huge influence in Latvia, but I saw all these gargoyles. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I? But it's what's important is that people want to know, people want to learn, people need to know. And as I said, if we don't access and take advantage of the resources that are available, then then we're at a disadvantage. We give our families and communities are at a disadvantage. I work with the Child ID program now, and the Child ID program provides these packets to parents, to schools, to anybody who wants them. And the ID packet has a way to document the child's DNA, inkless fingerprint, and the parents don't do anything with this until they have to do something with it, and they keep it on each child and keep it on and make sure that it's held. And the interesting thing is, traffickers will tell a child, nobody's looking for you. But a kid who knows my family, my parents filled this out, they're going to be looking for me. They're going to be looking for me.
I want to just touch on another subject in regards to all of this. I know that drugs are a big part of this, this particular subject, but also having been around people and even in family, mental illness, how much danger is there for those that are mentally ill, and how are they targeted?
I'm going to just jump in and say any vulnerable population, just handicapped, disabled, mentally ill, people that have been abandoned, neglected, unsheltered for any period of time, they are all vulnerable. They are easy targets because they have such great needs that haven't been filled or fulfilled, that they're going to, I want money, or I want food, or I want whatever it takes. A lot of the kids we rescued in our area over a decade, they did not have their basic needs met. So it was very easy, to to engage them in activities that they wouldn't have normally done. And then a lot of times once we got them, they would say, I never wanted to do such and such. I didn't want to steal, or I didn't want to do this. And a few of them did have mental issues. And what we're finding out, or what we've been finding out the last 6-7 years, even one sexual assault on a child 18 years or younger can result into up to 73 different illnesses, ailments, cancers, and mental illness. Just one. Now imagine the kid that's being sold 20 times a day. So we have got to get more courageous and more vocal about, hey, I don't know a lot about this, but I'm going to go check and see what my local leadership knows about it, or the local law enforcement. Hey, what do you guys do if this happens? What age are you listening to these kids? Stuff like that, because it starts a lot sooner than you think. I mean, we have babies that are trafficked for depraved behavior.
Wow. That's just, we just had a new guest drop in.
Hey, Blanquita.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry, I was stuck in a cab.
We were just talking about cabs.
I'm telling you, trying to get there as fast as I could, and the poor thing is saying, okay, I'm thinking about running this red light. But I said, don't do that. We'll get there. So here I am.
Well, welcome. I'm
Thank you.
Janice Debo. Yes, welcome to the conversation. So we really need to watch not just kids, but at-risk, population. And how prolific is the drug industry involved in this? I would assume it's huge, but
it's huge because a lot of people don't realize the drug people, especially the cartels, are the same ones that are now looking at this new form of the industry. And probably the ladies have told you they're making $1 billion a month just on human trafficking. And the fact of the matter is, Latinos, I don't think the mainstream press understands Latinos. They look like everybody that's coming across, wants to get citizenship or thinks ICE is terrible. Well, that's not true. They've never lived on the border. They don't understand that, Latinos don't want cartels using young children. And a lot of the guys, I'm on the Texas Border Coalition, a lot of those guys that are the border agents are Latinos. I have friends that I went to school with in Texas that have ranches and farms close to the border. They are very worried, and they're Latinos because they have people coming across their yards and lawns and farms that are not just illegal. That's not the issue. They're not worried about that. They grew up with that. A lot of them had their first, birthright citizens, but they don't like these evil guys that are trying to utilize the sensibility of fairness that most Americans have and are forcing them to turn their eyes away from the real evil that are the cartels. We got cartels at Mount Vernon High School here in Virginia, in Alexandria. Wow. We had one of the people that we were dealing with on our Voices Against Trafficking that was rescuing a kid, put him in a place of safety in Baltimore. The cartels followed him to Baltimore.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we have to have a real dialogue because in a way, it is insulting. As a Latin American, as I said, my mother maintained her Mexican citizenship her entire life. I have tons of relatives that know Mexico very well. It's insulting for Mexicans and Latin Americans to have people think that we're so stupid that we don't understand what it means to come across the border. We've had some great Mexican presidents, great presidents in other countries. We don't like cartels. Are they nuts? I mean, that's craziness.
So can I
But
have
it's easier to put, oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to have, is it Blanquita? Introduce yourself real briefly.
Well, I'll tell you my whole name. It's Maria de Guadalupe Blanquita Telvina Walsh Cullum Tola La Segunda.
Okay,
all of that.
But my friends call me, my working name on air is, of course, Blanquita Cullum. I'm a former Senate-confirmed governor that oversaw our international broadcasting, like Voice of America, Radio Free Europe and Asia, and Marti going into Cuba, Middle East Broadcast Network. I've worked on air as a journalist and still do. I do a program called the National Security Hour. I work with the Epic Times as a coach. And I have been MC of the National Memorial Day Parade now going on 24 years. So I've been around for a while.
Well, I'm very honored you joined in to our call, and we've been having a rather lively discussion, and you're not too late. You're just right on time. And
Blanquita has been a great advocate for us. And, as she said, many people don't understand the dynamic around Latina survivors and victims. And that's one of the first places we saw large numbers of boys being trafficked.
Yes.
Were Latina and Hispanic boys being trafficked. And the other piece of that is in the missing and exploited children number and then the numbers that are given to us by the ILO, the International Labor Organization. Those numbers of missing and exploited children do not include indigenous children on the reservations. And there is a huge population of indigenous children and women who are missing from reservations that are not being reported, that are not being recorded, that are not being advertised. And it's because they are indigenous. My mother is indigenous. She's Catawba and Muskogee Creek. My father is Nigerian. And so I grew up around my indigenous family on the reservations. And so it bothers me to think that we include numbers, but we don't include people.
Right. You got it right. And, and the thing of it is, they think they know who we are. The fact of the matter is, if somebody sees me, of course, they think I'm just, an all-American Anglo girl. They don't understand I've got a Mexican mother.
I never thought about that when I saw you, Black.
That's because I got the big hair from Texas and the makeup. But, I've got grandchildren that are Latino, that are Ethiopian and white, that are Chinese and white and Latinos. I mean, we're all mixed, and I love the mix. But I I don't want people to assume, because if they do that, first of all, the Cubans are different than the Puerto Ricans, that are different from the El Salvadorians, different from the Mexicans, different from the people from Venezuela. I mean, I knew Venezuela when I was working for the government when Chavez was there. They would send around the media police. Saved my life, to be so fair, because they didn't think I spoke Spanish. And really, yeah. But the crazy thing is, there's a saying in Spanish says la única diferencia entre nosotros los hispanos es el color de frijoles que comemos. That means the only difference between us Hispanics
is color. Yep.
is the color
It's
of the
color.
beans that we eat.
Well, and the thing about human trafficking, it's not specific to any gender, to any religion, to any color, anything. I mean, it is human trafficking. So any human being is vulnerable, is subject at any age. A 40-year-old friend of mine was almost snatched from a big box store. And, she's a little person, but still, I mean, they do not care. The predators do not care. And so we have to get off of this. It's only this section or this kind of person or this particular normal signature for this culture. There is nothing normal about human trafficking.
And the other thing, Andy, to your point on that is the traffickers are using babies and children at the border to get in easier. And they're putting them with families that are not their families. And then they discard them. The terrible situations where they're getting raped multiple times. And it's just it's a nightmare that we can't deal with it honestly.
In an average of 4 children a day are raped at the border. And I've said for a long time, because my mother did not look like she was African American, and my father absolutely did. One of the things that has been a challenge for me in doing training and doing education is that the disparity in the way that it's addressed, because human trafficking did not just begin with this movement. Trafficking of people of color began centuries ago, but it was the accepted norm. People of color have been trafficked for centuries, but it was expected, and so when a young Black girl ended up missing, they didn't look for her. They found her in a dumpster somewhere. And then what happened is she used to run away all the time. And even now, when young Black kids go missing, it's different than when other children, and I won't just say white kids, because it could be different kinds of other children. It could be Asian and it could be white, but when they go missing, it's a different dynamic, and you wouldn't know it unless you truly experience it. But they will ask these questions when the law enforcement comes in and that says this kid is missing. Well, who does she run with? Who are her friends? Does she run away often? Those are the kind of questions they ask our families as opposed to other families. And I think that, as Andy said, there is no difference. Human trafficking is human trafficking. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what nationality, what language you speak. If I have traveled around the world as a flight attendant, and I have been to places where until I opened my mouth, they didn't know what nationality I was. They knew what color I was, but they didn't know what nationality I was until I opened my mouth. And I think that's the challenge with human trafficking, is that we as people, we as advocates and educators, have to make sure people understand that it's not about what color you are. It is not about what nationality or what language you speak. It's not even about what gender, because there was a period of time at the border they were dressing young boys like young girls to get them through the border.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that we are unbiased in the way that we look at it, in the way that we talk about it, in the way that we educate people about human trafficking. Young Black girls and Black boys don't deserve to be trafficked any more than anyone else. But it seems that when we look at the numbers, we've got a higher population of children that go missing. And we have a smaller population of those that are reported. So it's important that when we educate across the board, because in the Latina community, you have Dominicans that are as dark as I am, but they speak a different language.
And Cubans
that are
and Puerto Ricans.
Yes, and Puerto Ricans that are, but but we can't say that only Latino, only Black, only white people are trafficked.
Right.
And that was one of the problems in the beginning of this movement, is that we only saw these pictures of little girls with long blonde hair who had a black
Right.
hand over their mouth. And I was very adamant about those pictures have to come down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're right. And it shouldn't be that way at all. In fact, if the media really wanted to be helpful, they would have, a missing child picture or 2 minutes on their broadcast saying, hey, we're looking for these 5 kids, or we're looking for this. And just like some of the big box stores used to have photos, on their bulletin
Yeah.
board when you walked in. They don't do that anymore.
And
But if
milk carton.
Right.
Yeah.
And if every news station, every outlet, every podcast even had, like Voices Against Trafficking.com, if you need help or something, if they were
Yes.
proactive, we would start normalizing the conversation about human trafficking versus, having all the divisiveness, because that doesn't help anyone. And as far as numbers go, we only get what's reported. I didn't
Right.
become a statistic officially till I was in my early 30s in counseling. So I wasn't
Yeah.
part of that. And so we have to be aware that if the statistics say, 2 out of 5 girls, it's really 3, closer to 4 out of 5 girls.
I agree.
And not 2 out of 8 boys. It's closer to maybe 3, out of 6 or 7, because we are not getting the reports. Who's going to report them? The cartels, the predators? They're not,
Right.
going to do that.
One of the things that we're working on at Women at the Well Transition Center, we started about 3 months ago, is we were trying to determine, with the World Cup coming to the US and with Atlanta being a host city, how were we going to educate masses of people? Because we went to the Super Bowl last year and educated in New Orleans. But how are we going to take on the largest sporting event in the world coming to the US and us being a host city? And so we talked about doing these videos. Well, we didn't get the videos. We didn't get the budget and time, but we have been working on the videos, because I tried to determine, walking around the airport, where do we have people standing long enough that they can see it? We have the pictures and we have the signage in the bathrooms. How many of us take the time to stop long enough to read that poster?
Right.
That's very few of us. We're trying to get in and trying to get out if there's not a line. And so we were trying to determine where else is someplace where people will stand long enough to look at the information, take it in, and perhaps scan a QR code. So we have been doing we're doing a series of videos. They're 90 seconds long, and they will all feature a survivor, whether it's a male, a female. We even have law enforcement officers. We have all kind of people that are going to be part of this video series, and it's going to give 90 seconds of just a blurb of either their story or how they witnessed it or what they did about it or what you can do about it. And the QR code on there will stay on the screen long enough for somebody who says, I need to know more about this, and they can scan the QR code and get the information. And those videos are going to be at baggage claim, because that's the only other place where people stand long enough
Exactly.
that they will see it. So those will be videos that are shown in the baggage claim areas.
Okay, ladies,
Awesome.
we've been going
Good
on an hour. So sorry. What I want to do is give, if each of you, if you want to have like a real quick wrap up, I give everybody a chance to say whatever's on your heart to wrap this up, and then if you'll stay on the call after we stop recording, then we'll have a quick chat. So who wants to go first, and we'll pass the pass the ball around.
Okay, BQ, since you came in at the tail end, you go first.
Well, all right, I'll do it, because you know how I was able to get involved with you all was through my business, which is radio and television. I was able to meet a great person, Andy Berger, and I didn't know the stories about human trafficking. I was pretty naive. And there Andy shares this with me. Well, how could I not become involved? And together we were able to co-found Voices Against Trafficking. But you know, it's my honor here to be with everyone that I consider a real hero, because you all have taken a chance not to avert your eyes, not to be one of those people after World War II that would say, we didn't know what was going on. Well, we do know what's going on. And part of that means you have to take a chance. You have to wake up. You have to figure out how you can best use your resources which I do through radio and TV, to try to make sure that we get the word out, just like you all.
Excellent. Thank you. Donna?
So I want to say this. Thank you for everyone who takes time to listen, to learn, and to make a difference. And if you're the difference that you make is simply to be educated and informed about human trafficking and how it impacts your family, your community, your business, then that is a first step. Make sure that you utilize the resources of Voices Against Trafficking with all of the information that is on the website. You can reach me at bishopdonnahubbard.com. That's easy. That's my name, bishopdonnahubbard.com. And all of the education and programs that we have at Women at the Well are listed on there as well. What's most important is get educated, get informed, get involved.
Exactly. Perfectly said. Sylvia?
I want to talk about what I started with, which is demand reduction. And I think, we didn't talk about it quite enough, but it's something to also think about is educating our kids that this is not okay. Because if the consumers are cut off, you're always going to have, the wackos that are going to do whatever. But, it's kind of normalized where men kind of think it's not a big deal. It's just normal. It's not a problem. So the more we can also educate youth and men that this is not okay, and you really are hurting other people, and it's not acceptable, and make it more kind of like the cigarette campaign is what I think of. When I was in the 60s, everybody smoked. Now it's very few people smoke, and it's not, you can't smoke in a restaurant, you can't smoke in the airport. Same kind of thing where the society kind of changes the narrative, and it becomes, real men don't buy sex is one of the groups that makes sense.
I love it.
So so I think,
Right.
more of that as well. Of course we have to keep educating and helping survivors, but we also have to kind of change the narrative in society so that it doesn't happen. And my program is youthforhumanrights.com. So people can go there. There's videos and materials about what are human rights, which includes a whole video about trafficking, because no slavery is one of the human rights under the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So
excellent. And we'll let Andy wrap up the comments, but I also want to invite each of our guests. Andy's already had a private interview, but if we want another one, we can do that too. So if you want a private interview, I have other resources that can get the word out. So Andy, you want to wrap us up, and then we'll all convene after this?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Janice, for hosting all of us today. We are so grateful because this is the first leg in a long race. And also, if you're out there listening and watching and you want to know what you can do, share this podcast. Share something that you feel comfortable. You've seen it. Pass it on to somebody, because that one person may pass it on to somebody else. And that's it's that pebble in the lake, the ripple effect. And as Sylvia said, demand reduction. If there's no demand, no one's going to supply it because there's no profit in it. And so if we can cut the demand and cut the taste for what seems normal now and take it back to what it should be, which is, well, we already discussed what that is. It's depraved, it's wrong, it goes against humanity. This is a crime against humanity. And at some point in your life, you can be touched by it. So please go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Put those numbers in your phone today. If you have children that are teenagers, explain it, tell them what the numbers are for, because guess what? Kids, when they start getting older and more independent, they'll talk to each other before they'll talk to an adult, even if it's a trustworthy adult. So we really need to get to them as well. But I want to thank everyone who is listening and is watching. And if you are someone who has been hurt and you need help or want help, let us know. voicesagainsttrafficking.com.
Yes. Thank you, audience. Thank you to all my guests. This has been fabulous. And yes, we've gone a bit long, but it's a topic that's never exhausted. So thank you to everyone watching. And as Andy said, listening, watching, however you come across this. Please like it, share, whatever you can do. Each one reach one, eventually will make an impact. And I do thank you to my audience and my followers. We will see you on the next broadcast. And ladies, we'll talk to you in a moment.